Hey everyone, my name is Brendan. I'm the assistant programmer here at Renew Theaters. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the members and supporters of our four Renew Theaters: the Ambler, County, Highway, and Princeton Garden Theaters. If you're joining us today, then you've just watched or are planning on watching Maybe Next Year, which is now streaming in our virtual theater. This local documentary follows four Philadelphia Eagles fans over the course of a single season during the Eagles' 2017 Super Bowl run. Right now, I'd like to welcome the film's director, Kyle Thrash.
Thanks for having me, Brendan.
And congratulations again on the film and the success of the film so far. I feel like this is a film that personally for myself, and even people that I know that aren't even into films, are not like avid film watchers, that they marked this film on their calendar when they heard about it because of, when you're a Philadelphia fan, especially a fan of the Eagles, anything about the Eagles, especially the moments that your film captures and the season that it captures is definitely a very big deal. So congratulations again on the film.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that.
So just to start things off, could you just give us a little background on your path to becoming a filmmaker, as well as your own sports fandom and connection to Philadelphia?
Sure. Yeah. I went to school at Drexel University. So that's where my film career kind of began. I was a child actor for a little bit. So I kind of got like a little bit of a taste into the entertainment industry. So when I was deciding what to do with my career and my life, I knew I wanted to kind of stick in the film world. So I went to school at Drexel, but I grew up in the Lehigh Valley, and both my parents and other parts of my family are very big Philadelphia sports fans. My mom actually had the Phillies game on in the delivery room when I was being born, just to show like how nuts my family is when it comes to Philly sports. Yeah, always been a big Philly sports fan, and I felt like this film is obviously the merging of two of my biggest passions.
So with Maybe Next Year, Eagles fandom, I feel like it's very renowned. Everybody, I feel like, at least in this country or even maybe around the world, recognizes Philadelphia fans. It's very notorious fans. So what was the initial nugget of inspiration for this film? Were you approaching it as a feature-length documentary at first, or was it going to start as a shorter project and then eventually balloon into something bigger?
So it started out as a short kind of character study. So some of the early like films that we were talking about was like Heavy Metal Parking Lot and some of Sean Dunn's work, just like character studies about people in a place and kind of how their inhabitants plays into who they are as people. So I was kind of looking at Philadelphia and looking at sports fandom through the people, going to tailgates, kind of following people in their daily lives. And I kept following through the season, and it turned out to be, the Super Bowl winning season. So it started out as just a short project, and as the season went on, it kind of grew and grew.
And when you started with the season, the 2017 season, did you ever expect at the very beginning, did you ever expect halfway through the season that would end with the Super Bowl?
No, I mean, when I was going to a game as a fan, and I was thinking of a project, and it was one of the first games of the season, and I was like, this is the year. I feel like maybe we should do it. And then when we started filming, at that point, like the team was, the team was doing well, so we felt like, that it felt good. But then when Carson goes down, I'm like completely like, the project wasn't really about the season as much as it is about fandom. So I felt like I wasn't expecting it. Like I felt like no matter what, we would have a good film that would just rest itself on the shoulders of it being about fandom and exploring fandom, about obsession and identity and tribalism and escapism, kind of like all the themes that are kind of bubbling around fandom when it comes to where that passion comes from. Those were the things I was exploring. So when the team got into the playoffs and then ended up going to the Super Bowl, those were things I just couldn't expect happening, and things that I wasn't planning on, but I knew I was a sophomore at Drexel when the Phillies won the 2008 World Series. And I remember the feeling around town. I mean, that's probably a little bit also where this came from, was like remembering what the riots were like the night of they won, and remembering what the bars were like, and remembering what that World Series felt like. So I felt like if as the season kept progressing, I knew that if this is anything like that, it's gonna be something worth capturing.
And you do follow 4 specific fans throughout the season. How did you get involved with the subjects that you eventually focused your film on?
A couple of different ways, some finding through like local bars, some finding through the internet, some finding through research, and some finding, of course, through listening to Philly sports talk radio. So we kind of found it in different ways. And the reason I chose those 4 fans was I kind of felt like they represent different sides of fandom, with its, Shirley with her passion, where it's just like completely, exuding from her, and always just, so much really positive energy. But then on the other side of that, Bryant, who runs his YouTube channel, which is a lot of, the Negadelphia that, I'm sure that we're really familiar with, which is like that feeling of always getting close, but always waiting for that other shoe to drop. So I felt like he kind of represents that long feeling of just self-doubt and feeling like you're never going to, you're never really going to get there. We're never going to win the championship. Barry with, his huge man cave really represents like obsession in some ways, just like loving something so much that like it takes over every aspect of your life, and it takes over, you build this kind of, this shrine towards his fandom. And then he invites all these people, he creates this community that really is like filled with a lot of love and a lot of support from people in the area that love him and love going there. So you kind of create this own tribe. And then there's Jesse, who's kind of like your everyday Philadelphian, who kind of, has the games on Sundays to kind of escape, kind of some of your other troubles that you have in your life. And you kind of use it as a way to kind of, be a part of something bigger than yourself, because maybe you're dealing with some other struggles. And he also represents legacy, which, it's like I was just talking about my mom, and my family, Philly sports fandom, just like a lot of fandom, gets passed on through generations. So I wanted to kind of use him to kind of explore that. So it's kind of why I chose the 4 and kind of how I found them.
Yeah, and I also felt like too that if when it comes to documentary filmmaking with your subjects, they felt like open books. Did it take at first? Did you have to gain any trust? Was there any resistance, or were they just open from the get-go?
I mean, we had, me being a big Eagles fan, we had that thing in common. So at least, and I got checked a couple times, I think, especially from Bryant, who was like, do you really know what you're talking about? Like, are you really like a real fan? Or like, why are you contacting me? And the same thing with Shirley. Like, I think other people had been, that have maybe, been a part of, other events or projects, or, other Eagles, events. I feel like for me, it was just about just saying like, hey, I want to approach this in a different way. And then I think gaining their trust through having this common denominator of us both loving the Eagles. I feel like, just spending time with them, I kept gaining their trust. And obviously the film is really, really, really intimate. You get really close in their lives. And I feel like from the beginning, that's what I was going for. So I feel like for me, it was just connecting with them as people and spending time with them, and, off camera, to kind of gain their trust. And it definitely went a long way when I felt like the cameras were rolling.
And another thing I find interesting, especially about documentary films, is also just the production process that goes behind it, and capturing all those stories and at those right moments. Can you just talk about a little bit about the process of capturing that on film? Did you have a massive crew when you started, or did it eventually evolve and balloon over time as it got deeper into the film?
Yeah, so it started pretty small, and then as the season grew and we went through the playoffs, that it kind of, it went, the crew got bigger. The night of the Super Bowl, I had eight cameras around Philadelphia and a 16-person crew just trying to film different areas and with certain characters, and so it kind of ballooned throughout, and it was kind of me continuing to try to figure out the best ways to do it, and then we went back in 2018 to kind of fill in with B-roll and try to make sure that the story was as filled and as possible for all of those moments.
And then as far as the footage, you must have accrued massive hours of footage. What was the post-production process like for the film?
Yeah, so we spent like a year editing it. We had over 50 days of filming, so it was a lot. It was something that between the games and B-roll and trying to just capture so many tailgates. I mean, a lot of what I was trying to do was this style of filmmaking, cinema verite, where you're kind of just watching and observing. So for me, sometimes there would be days where we wouldn't really get some things, and sometimes it would just be a small moment and we would use that moment later. So my editor and I, Matt Schaff, we just, worked on it, for a year and kind of just kept trying to tinker with it and play with it and see what kind of worked. But it was a lot of footage to sort through and to try to create this, this arc of a story.
And did you reach out to the Eagles organization at all about getting involved with the film, or even NFL Films? I think there's some NFL Films footage actually used in the film itself. So what was that like, reaching out to NFL?
The NFL came into play in the editing process when we were using some of their footage, and they were nice enough to give their blessing and to help. And also, besides and the Eagles organization, where they were nice enough, they brought me down to their training facility, and I met with them and talked about the film. And then one of the biggest assets also was sports talk radio, like WIP and 97.5 were huge in helping us with getting Merrill Reese's voice for a lot of the games, and so much of it is Merrill in those games, with those game calls. So they were nice enough to get us those calls throughout the season and to work with us. So, I can't thank, WIP and 97.5 enough for their involvement in the film.
Yeah, and also, I think this is such a cool story, and the fact, like I said before, like the fact that you're able to capture the story about the Eagles and Eagles fandom during a very special time in the team's history and the city's history. What advice would you have for aspiring filmmakers looking to get into filmmaking, and specifically even documentary filmmaking? Like, what advice would you give to them?
Well, this is my first feature-length documentary, and I feel like what worked for me on this one was obviously filming what I knew. Finding a subject matter that you have a lot of passion for, and something that I felt like I said at the beginning of our conversation, it's like the merging of the two passions. I'm a huge passionate film lover, and I love cinema, and I also love sports. So I was able to kind of combine those two passions. So I think I'd say try to find a subject matter that you can be very well versed in, and try to tell it through your authentic viewpoint. I feel like that's what hopefully helped me tell this story from an authentic place. And I knew a lot of the characters, and I knew kind of a lot of what Eagles fans go through. So I think hopefully that kind of helped shape and strengthen the story that I was telling.
And as an Eagles fan, are there any favorite Eagles players or moments over the course of your fandom that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, I think I love players that perform well on the field, but I'm even a bigger fan of players like Malcolm Jenkins, that kind of, works in the community and can, and guys like Connor Barwin, that do a lot of community stuff and help have helped Philadelphia and different organizations that they've started and been a part of. I think for me, I just think that obviously it's a beautiful game, and it's something that I feel like transcends just what happens on the field. And I love to see players use their influence, for change and to help the community that ultimately I feel, so connected to. And it's great when they also feel so connected to the area. Malcolm Jenkins, when he left to go to the Saints, he was like, don't worry, I'm keeping my house in Philly. Like I'm gonna, I'm still gonna be around. And same with Connor Barber when he comes back and puts on that concert at Union Transfer. So, it's things like that make you feel like even outside of the jersey that they really care about the community, the fans, and the city of Philadelphia. So those are two players that definitely stand out for me.
And one final question, and this is a question that our founder director of our theater asked me to ask you. And I'm going to give you an option not to answer as well. So who would you go with as a starting quarterback? Since you filmed during a season where Carson Wentz started and then ended with Foles, would you go with, right now, Carson Wentz or Nick Foles, or do you plead the fifth?
I'll answer it. I'll say this. Nick Foles has a statue outside the stadium. I mean, you can't get any higher than that. So I feel like Nick was the perfect player for the right situation. I like to think of him as this great relief pitcher, that ultimately like he came in and hit the right spots and threw the right balls and made the right plays to get where we needed. But Carson Wentz is the future. Even with his ups and downs, I have full faith in him. I feel like he's playing right now with a lot of injured linemen and a lot of practice squad wide receivers. So I feel like he's the guy in the long haul that I want, the ball in his hand at that moment. You've seen in the last couple of games what he's done in the fourth quarter. I mean, he just, when the game's on the line, I mean, he really can put it together. So for me, my money's still on Carson Wentz to lead this team to another Super Bowl.
That is a perfect answer. I don't think anybody could answer that more perfectly than that. Thank you again. That was all the questions I had. Thank you again. And really, again, maybe next year, it's especially coming out during a season where it's a little up and down so far with the Eagles. It's really nice to revisit Eagles fandom and what it means to be an Eagles fan and why we love the Eagles. So thank you again for taking the time out of your day, Kyle, to join us for this Q&A.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
A Super Bowl championship in this town is the holy grail.
If I would have to go, I would want it to be during a game.
Did you ever doubt Rocky? Ready! We're the city of underdogs.
Buckle up. This next 30 minutes is going to be something.
You ride it down with your team all the way or no way. You gotta